Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome. We're doing a series on the revelation of Jesus Christ, Another Look. Today we will be doing episode 4. In our last episode, we talked about the tectonic plate shift and the cessation of air currents and the marking of the 144,000 and the celebration in heaven of the martyrs. We also mentioned that it got real quiet up there for about 30 minutes as horns, shofarim, or trumps were handed out. We don't know what they sound like. We just know that they are about to sound. So let's begin. A sound rings out. This will be trump number 1. No one could tell what it is, but Jewish people might, and I say that carefully, they might recall a certain mountain and man and gathering where there was a sound. The people didn't want to hear that sound because they felt they would die. Exodus chapter 20. That sound may or may not be the same sound that is about to ring out periodically 6 more times. And with each sound, things just get worse. But before that sound, something else happens. This perhaps is the worst thing we could ever imagine. Right now, there was a launch of something called DART, the Aeronautic Space Institution, and it's a program designed to try and see if we can nudge an asteroid out of its course to keep it from hitting the Earth. It wasn't a very remarkable thing. I mean, it hit the target, but that was about all it did. It did a little nudge. That was about it. I think the results were, we would need a much bigger, badder, bolder, my giddy ant thing to go off in order to make a difference. Yeah, so this is either going to be the beginning of the program or it just died. DART killed it. I don't know. Asteroids, meteors, most fry up in the atmosphere. Some explode in the sky. The last one to really hit the ground killed the dinosaurs. So, up in heaven, an angel takes a censer, and there is fire, and there is incense. The incense is prayer, the prayers of the saints or sanctified ones. So believers, when it says God pays attention to you and knows what you're praying and maybe saves all your tears in a bottle, He means it. Your prayers are heard and they become an offering. God receives these prayers, and we don't know what they actually are. They're just prayers. Of course, the censer and fire routine actually belong to worship, not petition. So perhaps the worship of the sanctified ones. Once this is over, the angel repurposes the censer. You see, God recycles. He fills the thing with fire or a debris that's hot like coals or charcoal or whatever goes for fire in heaven, and he flings it. And the Greek word here is eis, or into. So he flings it, ekbalo, throw, into the land, jess, or earth, or ground. So, somewhere on the planet, we now have a meteor strike. Guess DART missed that one. Then we have thunder, lightning, and another earthquake. Didn't we just have an earthquake? Oh no, earthquakes are going to be very prevalent throughout this entire book. Well, if something hits the earth, one would have to imagine it would give off a big bang like thunder. Lightning might be seen to flash at the point of impact. There would be a massive ripple reaction to something punching into the ground. Liquefaction at impact is the most likely thing to occur. That epicenter will spread out, too. Then we have our first sound. Remember, this is number 1. It's new. and distinct. And as soon as it happens, there is a new problem. Something else falls to the earth. It's like hail, or rather, it is a hail that has sulfur in it, brimstone, and it's on fire. Oh, hail may not be in water balls, but debris from the stuff that got hurled up when the rock punched into the ground. Wildfires will spring up wherever the debris hits the ground. Why? Because it's on fire. Now again, we have the word guess. So it's either global or regional. But the effect is very widespread, as 1/3 of the forest canopy over either regionally or globally is burned up from wildfires, forest fires, and all the grass is burned. Now, again, this may mean locally or globally, in that I think we're looking at local ideas. Matthew 24, Jesus said there would be rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes in various and diverse places. Right. So these are happening everywhere. Things are happening everywhere. So I would say that the grass is burned in that area. 1/3 of this region loses its forest canopy and grass. Now again, it's more likely that the forest fires are on the ground that is destroyed by the fire. California has become quite famous for its annual fires. The acreage can be immense, and when there is a blaze, usually the grass is destroyed as well. More than likely, this is what we're seeing. Moreover, if there is more than one impact area due to the fact that this was falling from height, we might have multiple impact zones, all catching fire and burning till they burn out. Now, if you have multiple impact zones of burning debris over a forested area, you will have multiple forest fires. And guess what? That aggregate effect could be up to 1/3 of the region, or 1/3 of the forest spread. I mean, God help us if this hits like the Amazon. Yowza. That's a lot of acreage. 1/3 of the regional forest area and grass is burned. It's presumed perhaps to the root, because what would happen if it's burning sulfur that's falling? What if what hits the ground is sulfur-laden rock? That explosion would be a thunderclap, and that will echo all over. There would be a roar of rocks going up. Flashes would be of a brilliant blue of sulfuric dust catching fire, and what goes up shall come down as flashing blue, orange, yellow tips of rock explosions, which then draw in more sulfur to the heat made from the first explosion. I Googled it, causing even more explosions. There's your thunders. Multiple explosions of sulfur content as it's being hurled upward, and multiple explosions of sulfur content as it's showering down. Meanwhile, who knows how long ago the first thing that boiled the sky, occluded the sun, and reddened the moon, blotting out the blue sky, the starry night, had occurred, and where it occurred, and if the effect is still occurring. This new strike will have a repeated effect, causing this to either continue or intensify as the ground beneath it burns from the fiery nuggets of sulfur, deforesting the planet, regionally or globally, by 1/3. We don't know. The key is the word guess. We do not, or Jess, however it's pronounced in the Greek. We don't know whether it's world, land, or ground. That's the way it goes to the Greek. Well, this new strike will have a repeated effect. This could be a new region, but it will still affect the skies. Nature's madness intensifies. Consider the ecosystems that are now destroyed by just these two events. Consider perhaps agriculture and industrial destruction, and cities, which may have been impacted by just these two events. And we've only gotten started, folks. It does not have to be a global thing to quickly have a global effect. In ancient Rome, Nero blamed the fire that ruined Rome on Christians. He impaled them in his gardens, lighting them on fire for lamplights. Imagine what governmental leaders are going to start thinking about us at this point. But it continues. Once again, we hear the sound. This will be number 2. Now a mountain. And in the Greek, the word is oros, Strong's, Greek 3735, followed by the word megas, as in mega-sized. A literal big mountain is violently thrown down and is sent into the sea, thalassus. In other words, to strike the sea. The Greek for sea does not give a specified body of water, just the sea, and since latter texts will indicate springs, denoting the fresh water, this should be an indication of salt water. In the area of impact, something happens to the water to turn it blood red. Also, either it heats up or deoxygenates or both. This will cause a marine life die-off of massive proportions because this may start locally, but you have tidal currents. You might not have wind currents, but the moon is still out there, folks. The moon is what moves the water. You don't need air. You don't need weather currents to move the water. That just moves the air. So long as the moon is out there, the water will move. So you will have tidal currents. And so the effect will spread. A third of the sea life is destroyed. That will have an economic impact on the fisheries, not to mention the ecological impact it has on the sea. But wait, there's more. As for the first time, we now have a real economic implication. Along with 1/3 of the marine life, 1/3 of the ships are destroyed. Ships. Is this shipping lanes? Is this a populated area? And those are commercial or military vessels that are destroyed as the marine life is destroyed by a mountain being thrown into the sea? Ships don't normally sail in large numbers in fresh water. But there are shipping lanes in both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Now, imagine the impact of something hitting either the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, which causes 1/3 of the marine life to simply die off, turns the water into something fish can't live in, and takes out 1/3 of the shipping lanes. This is going to go global very fast now. Right here, I need to mention something that's not mentioned in Scripture. You see, God discloses what He is going to do, but not always all the details as to how it's going to affect mankind. If there was a strike in either the Atlantic or the Pacific Oceans bad enough to destroy marine life and ships, there will be an impact. If it's into the seabed, which is very likely, and even if it isn't, there will be one more effect, and it will be far-reaching. A tsunami. That thing will travel with lightning speed to all the coasts it can touch, and the water surge will be immense relative to the distance of the coastline from the point of impact and whether or not there's a reef system or continental shelf to cause the water to crest up and slam down, flowing inland, then raking everything and everyone out to sea. As water is doing this, it will drive the damaged ecosystem into the coastlands. You just have to think this through. Think through the sequence of what usually happens after a given event. Like a point of impact, the tsunamis will affect multiple areas as they hit. People may have been doing fairly well. The problem is over there. But at this point, they may well be feeling the sting of the wrath. I guarantee it. In fact, I don't think of too many places in either ocean where we wouldn't have a lot of coastal and island issues. Yeah, not to mention the economic impact. Oh, I guarantee people are going to feel this one. One more thing starts to stand out in stark comparison. Each one of these things may be a local event, but it will have a global impact. As each new disaster happens, the world gets a little more frenzied. Minds snap as men's hearts fail them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Luke 21:26. When we think of the powers of heaven, we think, there will be meteor strikes, there will be asteroids, there will be comets. Some debris belt will come flying by and start slamming into us. No. The powers of the heavens or skies can absolutely be shaken, upset by what is going on, just this, and the concept of what goes up must come down. From where? The heavens, the sky. People in the affected areas will continue to go feral. They kill, they war, over territory, over resources. Suddenly, you're hearing not rumors, but real-time reports of wars and uprisings and earthquakes and famines. And all around the world, civilization is slowly unraveling. The believers are told not to panic, because these are just birth pangs. In Matthew 24, Jesus literally calls this labor pains. We haven't even had the baby yet, folks. This is just the beginning, meaning it's going to get worse, a lot worse. The difference here is that now the new land-based eruption will cause the sun to, if it hasn't already disappear again. It will also cause sulfuric acidification of the air and more cooling off and more darkness due to fallout. It will also cause the destabilization of governments, destruction of resources and supplies, and the ability to process raw materials at scale. The world is starting to unhinge, and anyone talking about this book might actually be ripe for death. In fact, to talk about this book, the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ, may be deemed hate speech. Think about it. The world may well be in full denial. I mean, bury your head in the sand, right? It'll just go away. Meanwhile, just as the Jew in Jesus' day was plodding along face down under the jackboot of Rome, we will be at the mercy of Gaia. Mother Earth. Only believers will be aware of what is really happening. Most others will either believe that Gaia is pissed and she best be appeased, or these are attacks from other countries. Meanwhile, the leadership that hid, maybe they came back, maybe they didn't. Maybe something happened to their bunkers and the mountains actually did come down on them and they're all dead. I don't know. I mean, you dig out a mountainside and then you have earthquakes and you think the thing is going to hold up. You hollowed it out. So those that do come back only to find that the disasters just keep right on coming. And depending on where this is happening, there might be an upheaval of government and a massive loss of life. Eco-warriors will be absolutely appalled by this one. But the shipping that is affected, it could be both commercial and military, and as this is happening in a shipping lane, fisheries and the fishing industry will grind to a halt as the fisheries close. All of the shipping, all the stuff that was in transport from one place to another, gone. Whole industries will start to grind to a halt. There will be a fallout all over the civilized world. But it continues. First the sound, and then the thing. Next, sound. This is number 3. And again, it's a meteor, or it's debris, or something that burns like a lamp. So, the first thing that comes to mind is a comet. Okay. This thing hits the ground and it affects the fresh water. Its effect is on a third of the rivers and fountains of waters in the region where it hits. And this thing has a name, wormwood. Whatever it does to the water table, it either poisons it or maybe it allows salt water to enter into the table in sufficient quantities to make it absolutely undrinkable. As for the item, the Greek uses the word ether or star. This isn't falling debris. This is something from outer space. This is something new. There's a reason for this being called wormwood. Another Google search gives me this. There is a plant used in certain alcohols. It's actually good for the gallbladder, but it's bitter. And it contains something called thujone, or thuyon. It's a ketone monoterpene that is a neurotoxin. This will kill you. It's called wormwood, and its most famous liquor is absinthe. It can cause hallucinations, and if there's enough thujone in it, it can kill you. People who drank a lot of this absinthe had a lot of vomiting, seizures, erratic behavior, and hallucinations. Whatever this thing does, it mimics the effects of wormwood. It quite possibly causes hallucinations, erratic behavior, vomiting, neurotoxic issues just from drinking water. This may be far worse than wormwood poisoning, but still, it continues. You see, now there is no waiting for a response. When the seals were breaking, you would have these sort of pauses, and you would be told the men weren't repentive, they weren't repentive. Now this is sort of just rolling out. These judgments are a series. They roll out pretty much one right after the next. Maybe once a year, or once a month, or every 7 days, or I don't know. No one knows the timeline, but what's clear is that these are that which Jesus spoke of. There may have been a massive eclipse or volcanic explosion back in 30 to 70 AD. I don't know. I haven't looked. The abomination of Daniel is a direct result of Rome. You see, Jesus spoke at the end in Matthew 24, at the end of the temple age, and then a time which is yet to come. As a careful read of Matthew 24 will show that Jesus starts out talking about the end of the temple era. He leaves instructions to his disciples to pass on to other believers about a point where they can get out of town before the temple's destroyed. After that, he starts talking about stuff that most people take as symbolic. The sun, the moon, the stars, etc., before the great and terrible day of the Lord appears. I've had people tell me, well, this is the end of the temple in 70 AD. Really? The Old Testament, the great and terrible day of the Lord, is not the sacking of Rome. No, no, no. This, what I'm doing this thing on, is this. This book is giving you the great and terrible day of the Lord. There you go. So, our next sound comes. Number 4. And it's followed by a loss of a third of the sun, moon, and stars, or, as in 536 AD, the sunlight, the brightest time of sunlight, is reduced by a third. Likewise, the moonlight. The sky is permanently obscured with cover enough to blot out the stars. The length at the strength of the day is reduced by a third. In other words, your viable daylight hours are reduced by 4 hours. So you have 2/3 of the day, 2/3 of the night that you can actually see anything in. Maybe. Like I said, in 536 AD, this did happen. There were reports of losing a lot of the daytime, and the daytime being greatly reduced. The summer was like the winter, and the winter was brutal. David Key's book talks about the impact of one volcanic blast on the whole world and on history. I am talking about multiple events on an interconnected global society. These sounds are heralds to doom. They will drive men insane. Was it your turn to be impacted? Wasn't it bad enough already? What is happening to the world? Men get real spiritual, and those who read the Bible realize very quickly who is doing the impacting. Some may repent, most will harden. This is a judicial hardening of the heart that turns them cold, bitter, and angry, and the Christian is the focus of the social rage. As if this wasn't plain enough or bad enough, we suddenly have what appears to be an extraterrestrial being that flies through the air, warning the inhabitants of the planet about the next 3 sounds. He calls them salpikos, Strong's Greek 4536, salpikos. It's a salpinx. It's a particular kind of trump. And on YouTube, you can listen to one being blown. SALPINX, salpinx. It's the idea of a quavering or reverberating sound. Commonly the concept of the trumpet or horn being blown. This is the salpikos of Scripture. It's a war horn. It's a very loud sound, and the next 3 will be bad. Very, very bad. So, let the inhabitant consider themselves warned. But the fact that a being flew, or for the first time we the people of Earth have an explanation for the sound and the events, will lead many to believe, as E.T. conspiratists have been claiming all along, the E.T.s who were once called gods are angry, and they're returning. Oh boy. I know biblical scholars are cringing, but I'm looking at this from the standpoint of the common, unsaved, unspiritual individual whose morning java is rudely interrupted by the first massive quake, or news thereof, or fallout from it. General anxiety levels have been spiking for some time. Cause unknown. Crime has been on the rise for some time. Cause uncertain. When the earthquake happened, our peerless leaders ran for cover. In fact, stories of the rich and the governmental officials and the nutcases abound that they all ran for cover. Maybe. In fact, some might still be undercover. Like I said, hollow out the inside of a mountain, have an earthquake. Maybe the mountain fell on them. Maybe they're not dead, but they're going to die soon because they're trapped. That's one way to ride out the storm. How many governments might still be in their bunkers trying to ride it out? How many might be trapped? Now, the scientific community is faced with the fact that at last we discover not only are we not alone, but the other guys can hurt us and apparently don't like us. Imagine the mental state of the world after that announcement. Also, who knows? Did the messenger show up as an angel in a machine? Possibly not. How did the message broadcast? Was it to the hearing of the ear or to the mind? Was it audible or telepathic? All I can say is the message was broadcast and the angel was seen, but this is not how most people will understand these events. As far as they're concerned, E.T. finally phoned home, and he's pissed. Roswell, what have you gone and done? On our next episode, we will be discussing the last 3 Trumps. And trust me, if you thought things were strange, y'all don't know the meaning of the word strange. Because these next 3 Trump effects will make absolutely no sense whatsoever.